We're live. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us today. It is a busy week. In one short week, we've managed to get 2 lives in. Yesterday with Phil Burton. Today we got Brandon Hammond. Phil from the end, both kind of from the SFR BTR side of things. So healthy conversations this week as we're all opening up those spreadsheets. Let's see, version.xxy21233bh edits _gs edits v2, and you're passing that spreadsheet around trying to make sure that your budget is ready for iteration. So healthy conversations around getting to hell yes in this space. We also have another panel, a discussion coming on Friday around budgets, around organizational hierarchy, the careers in multifamily, specifically the maintenance side of things. To kind of, as everyone's talking about the froth around budgets this time of year and looking towards 2026 and looking towards some of the challenges we've had over the last few years and maybe some assumptions that just don't hold anymore, right? And how we can rethink those as we think about how we're going to go win the market in 2026. So for today, we're talking to Brandon Hammond. Brandon's got a career, a long career through both the SFR and the multifamily side, which is very interesting dynamic, and now working on a field services side of things. So talk about knowing all 3 legs of the stool and a background of that. And one of the things about the Hell Yes conversation for everyone listening, as always, we are seeking to solve problems for people that are looking to have them solved. So someone mentioned this to me, be helpful to people who are looking for help. No, hang on. Help people that need help, that are looking for help. Help people that are looking for help with help that is helpful. That was the one that was told to me. And all those kind of words all stacking together is like, in a getting to hell yes conversation, the buyers we want to talk to are beyond that's interesting, but they've usually tried something else to try and solve this problem. And many cases in multifamily, that problem, that first try is to try and hire somebody. And so now the interesting world that we're in is maybe I can't find the people to do the work. Maybe I can't find the vendors to do the work because they're the same pool of talent, especially in a regional context. And so what am I going to do now? And so it's a combination of the talent, the partners, the technology that's kind of coming out of a lot of these conversations we've had in the last few weeks. As always, please engage with the questions that you have in the live. If you're watching this live, if you're watching this after the fact, add any comments in there. Brandon and I will both get tagged in that. We'll be able to respond on that. This is brought to you by IRCX. IRCX is AI remote maintenance software that help you with property management. We help you know before you go. And the idea behind that is that if you have a line of sight into what the problem is prior to dispatching that tech, that trip, that vendor, you can save half your trips. So it's a pretty exciting conversation. Please reach out to me if you want to hear more about that. As always, we kick off this conversation with our guests and set the context of everyone's journey to get to where we are today. And Brennan, your journey is very unique, as I said, starting in or experience in both the multifamily campus piece into the scattered site, similar gaps with speed and quality, both have had to struggle through, and the impact on cost and NOI. Tell us a bit about your background. How did you end up in this role? And tell us some of the problems you've been solving throughout your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me on. I'm excited for the conversation. So, my background is I have joked with people that it's a mile wide and an inch deep. I have touched on off-campus student housing and conventional multifamily and SFR. I've been on both the operations side on site and on the facilities and construction and renovation and turn side. And I've worked with companies that are some of the largest institutional players in their respective spaces and small mom and pops where I had an office of 10 people and that was the whole company. And, the one thing I'll say about that journey is that, I end up looking at each one of those spaces and most of the folks, especially folks that are in them and have spent their full careers in them, will say that they are unique, that their industry or their sector of the industry is a snowflake. And having touched on all of them, I'd say that there's a whole lot more in common that each one of those sectors has than not. And at its core, it's about how do we provide great homes for people, and how do we serve our residents, and how do we serve as leaders? How do we serve the people that are that are serving those residents so that they can provide a better product and a better experience for our residents. So the quick rundown is I started in college, like so many people do, looking for a way to make extra money. I was a resident assistant, and at this dorm that I lived at, it was a private off-campus dorm. Resident assistants were also leasing agents. The company that managed that dorm offered me a full-time role out of college. Went and was an assistant manager at a property at our rival university, which was an interesting dynamic. And then I kind of stayed in and around the real estate space ever since. I spent 8 years working for a regional vertically integrated developer, owner, manager of conventional and off-campus student housing apartments, and then moved into the SFR space. I ran a 750 home property management company here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, where I live. All third party, 750 houses, 600 owner clients. So a lot of kind of the landlords by circumstance that were in that client base, and then moved back into student housing for a few years at one of the largest student housing companies in the U.S. And then got a call to go to Progress Residential, which is one of the largest SFR players in the space. We had 90,000 houses and across the U.S. And that call was to come work on their construction side. So we were managing renovations and turns, about 30,000 projects a year across that 90,000 home portfolio. And we were creating the environment that our residents were going into. I mean, we were the front line of like, hey, this is going to be your first impression of as you're moving in. And unfortunately, I was affected by a layoff at Progress late last year, along with many others. And I spent the first half of this year with Crown Field Services out of New York, but we provided property services.
Property services. Let me be back in a second here. All right. So, you're back.
Yes.
The stage.
Sorry
there
about
we go. All right. You provide property services. Crown Field Service.
Provided property services, renovation, turn, occupied maintenance services in about 36 states, and kind of worked with them to develop a business development arm. Everything that they had gotten in the SFR space specifically prior to that was from their property preservation business, kind of from that space, or through some conferences that they had attended and things like that. And when I came on, they said, we really want to sell into the SFR space. We want to get in with some of the institutional players. Can you build that out for us? So worked with them to build not just a business development arm and kind of building out a CRM for them to be able to track some prospective clients and activity, and but also working on kind of a client success and client onboarding program that was repeatable and scalable. Organizing, their licenses and certifications that they had, and in what geographies they served, all to kind of set them up to move on and have a sustainable business development, department if they chose. And we had some really great success when we got onboarded with 3 of the top 5 SFR players in the U.S. I got on board, ironically, with a very large PE firm that had 300 self-storage facilities around the U.S. to do your CapEx for them. We're working with, right as I left, working with one of the larger military housing providers in the U.S. and helping them do some turn work, and then had just gotten a bid package to submit for one of the largest student housing. On-campus student housing management companies to help them do turn work this year, and hopefully they were able to win some of that work and move into that space too. So it was a lot of fun, and now I'm looking for my next role, my next challenge. I've been my contract ended with Crown Field Services back in May, and I've been looking and talking with a lot of companies to kind of see where I want to navigate to into the space.
And is Crown was it private equity backed?
No, it's closely held. Yeah, closely
held. Interesting. That's something. It's an interesting dynamic that we're kind of exploring a little bit these days in terms of like how the private equity, like we talk about the talent that's available in the market, and the impact of private equity being a competitor for multifamily from a talent perspective. It's very difficult to compete against that kind of a bank balance, right?
Yeah.
And so
And in this journey, the last few months of kind of, not just exploring new roles and exploring new companies, but just really kind of cultivating my network as I've been doing that. I mean, I have a short list now of 6 contacts that I've met with over the last few months that are like, hey, I'm also working with a PE firm that is looking to make acquisitions, either in the third party PM space. One is an HOA management space. A couple are services companies that they're looking to acquire. So it's really interesting, kind of the dynamics that we're in right now. And I think the amount of consolidation that's going to come to this space over the next 3 to 5 years is, it's going to be impactful. It'll be opportunity.
It'll be opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. So then we take a look at your career, and you mentioned a bit of a hook there on, while everything's different, they're very much the same, or everyone feels different, they're very much the same. You look at the core problems affecting the industry right now, like, if I just look back at, I'll just do kind of like talk about like walking an exhibition floor, because that's kind of like a bit of a tea leaves in terms of like what's selling right now, right? So they walked the exhibition floor, I think of Optech last year, and it was a lot about leasing. A lot of it was about that whole leasing front end experience, right? Acquisition, resident acquisition. And then now you're hearing a lot more conversation. I heard it at AIM. I heard it again at Retcon, was conversation about renewal conversation. So you got the back end, the front end and the back end of it all. And underneath that, there's a talent conversation. When you look at property managers out there right now today, and I think that, we'll give permission to kind of like talk about the two different types of arrangements: an owner, operator, and then maybe just a third party, because you had experiences with both those.
Yeah.
How can we begin to address this gap around, I'll say revenue, right? And then dial it back into the acquisition piece, revenue piece. And then that would include, of course, the scoring, the onboarding, the tours, all that whole part of the P&L, and then the retention piece. So when you're looking at those two different, get them, keep them, right? And then, of course, that also has a different lens to it when you think about the resident retention, but also owner retention, especially in the SFR space, where owner retention is a lot more volatile than in the multifamily side of things. So that's kind of like dropped a few things on there. But when you take a look at the priorities that your conversations that you're having out there, where are people still leaning in on? Are they leaning in on acquisition? And I guess, and more so, not what they're just talking about, but where are they spending their money?
Yeah.
On the acquisition piece, on the retention piece, and how is it different between an owner, operator, and just a fee manager?
Yeah, it's interesting that you made that last clarification too, because it's where they are talking about and where they are spending their money and dedicating budget are completely different things.
Yeah.
And so I think I just think that the dollars haven't caught up to where they've realized the conversation actually needs to be. And I think there's greater ROI to be had making a resident a long-term resident versus fighting for the next 1-year lease every single time.
Yeah.
I think that operators and asset managers both are finding that that's the case. They have not dedicated spend to that nearly as much as they are talking about it yet. But I actually think, going back to my thoughts of there's more in common across each sector and kind of each vertical of the space. I think the acquisition, the resident acquisition and the resident retention conversations have as much overlap in that if you take a step back and you look at it from a resident experience standpoint, a resident journey standpoint, to be more specific, they are looking at and more heavily weighting that tour to application to qualification to lease signing to pre-move in to move in and call it the first 30 days after move in. Yeah. Residents have a real spotlight in their minds on that. And it's because it's just they're all the highest touch parts of their journey with your property, whether it's an SFR property or an apartment community. And so, that may end up being, 1/18 of their total time spent interacting with your staff across, move in and then a lease and then a renewal.
Mhm.
But they're going to look at that as 75% of the factors whenever they look at, or they're going to sign that lease renewal. And so to me, I think if you start kind of looking at the tools that you are utilizing, the tech that you're utilizing, the way that your staff members approach those conversations with the residents from application onward as one single continuum and one single spectrum, I think that you end up coming out ahead. And way back in student housing in 2009, I used to have a conversation with leasing agents at properties, small apartment communities across the Southeast. And I said, you want every phone call to turn into a tour, every tour to turn into an application, every application to turn into a lease, every lease to turn into a move-in, every move-in to turn into a renewal, and look at it as that kind of cascade of steps.
It's a funnel.
It's absolutely that. And but the goal is to take a funnel and turn it into a cylinder, or as close as
or a flywheel, right? A flywheel is really the least amount.
I really like that.
Yeah, flywheel, right?
Yeah. And so that to me is kind of the shift the perspective from kind of a top down, looking at your dashboards all the time and seeing where the outliers are and trying to solve those individual problems, and look at it as more of a holistic kind of front to end journey. And I think you're doing well. And I think you're going to do much better long term. And then your operations, to your point, and the word that you just used, become a flywheel, right? They become self-sustaining instead of episodic, instead of kind of trying to solve the next problem and playing whack-a-mole.
So this is the whole common sense. One sec, my dog. This is the whole thing that common sense isn't so common, or what we say and what we do are two different things. In that, when I take a look at the common sense around transactional relationships are 4 to 5 times more expensive than flywheel relationships. I mean, and really, all you got to do is step on a Peloton bike or on a spin bike and make that first pedal stroke. That first pedal stroke is way more energy than once the thing's going, right? And it just keeps going. That's the whole premise of the flywheel. But here's the thing that I've kind of I'm trying to figure out, and maybe you can help with this in your experience, is that while somebody gets paid on a lease, it comes down to one person. I can go and measure that one person that got paid on signing a lease. It seems to be that nobody gets paid on a renewal. Mm-hmm. Not one person. It's a team game, right? So you've got an individual game and then a team game, and it is getting. And so for starters, is that your experience? That similar scenario?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I think, in every lease up I've been involved in, and in student housing, every single year is a lease up. I mean, you start from zero on August 25th and, have to get to 100 by July 31st of the next year. But yeah, even in student housing, it was exactly that. We had individual lease bonuses for new leases. We had a team bonus that went into a pot that got split, across the full team for renewals. And it's tough to, on that renewal piece, it's tough to identify, a lead stakeholder then. I mean, so who's going to champion that renewal process and really lean on that? And not only that, but, the incentives, at least I think this is shifting a little bit, but the incentives were almost equal. The bonus that we would give for a new lease and the bonus that we would give for a renewal that went into that pot were equal dollar amounts.
But one's to one person, one's divided by 50.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so not only is that that not aligned with where your ROI is, but again, look from a team member's perspective, and you're like, oh, I mean, I can get $100 for a new lease, and I can get $13 and change for a renewal. I'm going to go out and follow up on leads and not invest my time in the resident experience.
And if the math is easy, let's say the straight math on 50% renewal, or even 60 to reduce the arguments. But that means there's 40 opportunities that I, as a leasing agent, get paid and there's 60 divided by 12
Yeah.
that I get paid on for the renewals.
Yeah.
So while one's a certainty, I've got an at risk. And this is part of this whole conversation of like what motivates people to create change and adopt change. If that I'm chasing 40 opportunities to go get paid from a lease renewal perspective. Like, in fact, if renewals go up, I get paid less as a leasing agent, which is like, this is
but the owner makes more, makes multiples more. And
but then it gets into this conflict of interest. I mean, even at the role level, I would say, and I don't want to suggest that I'm not suggesting that the conflict of interest is malicious. It's what it is. And so that system has to figure out how to make it work for everybody. And the challenge with that, maybe a better way, misaligned interests. So it sounds really negative when I say conflict of interest, but the misaligned interests or outcomes with respect to a leasing agent and a renewal for a building that's got a fixed amount of units makes for some interesting baseball.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's how is it going to solve? Because everyone's sitting around scratching their heads going, how is this going to solve itself?
Yeah.
But there's some structural problems around what needs to be solved.
There's a I won't say a big conversation. It was a big conversation that I was watching, I'll say, on LinkedIn. Call it 60 or 90 days ago. It was in the third party SFR space, that about aligning incentives for a property manager.
Oh, nice. You can send me that link. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was all about, traditional third-party property management companies that are, small businesses, like what I used to run, that had 750 houses, and had a boatload of owner clients. They make more money at the worst times for an owner. So they make larger leasing fees when they sign a new lease, when the owner has been experiencing zero income because it was vacant. They have markups on their work orders that they process. So, they're more incentivized to make more money if the resident is putting in work orders, but that's costing their owners, even more. And is there a reckoning coming in that? And is there a better way of doing it? Just because this is the way that it's always been done, it's never a good long-term thing if we're making more money by serving our owner clients worse.
Well, it feels as though we've kind of like created a lose-lose and a zero-sum game, but it doesn't need to be that way.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's exactly right. And so, you look at that. I think it's that scenario in third-party SFR is so stark and just so easy to see and look at. And you mentioned common sense earlier. That's not so common, but when you do look at it, you're like, that actually makes sense. What they're saying. It gets a lot murkier when you start looking at the staffing in the department community. And to your point, if a resident or rather not a resident, but a leasing agent kind of looks at, or an assistant manager looks at their paycheck during peak leasing season versus, peak renewal season. And in student housing, those are very different seasons. Peak renewals is basically right now. And heavy new leasing season starts in a couple of months. To your point, it's not malicious. It's just natural. Human nature is that they're gonna gravitate toward what provides them the most security and the most income. And
it's all the money.
Yeah.
Right? And so I find it interesting that we're all scratching our heads around how to solve these problems. But if you follow the money, like there's some pretty obvious inconsistencies that pop out. Yeah. And and this is also a human condition, is like talking about money is uncomfortable. And so we talk about, accountabilities and responsibilities that fall under different towers within an organization. I mean, budget, and then maybe leadership falls into different silos. You're manufacturing a situation where there's going to be competing objectives for a single person who's getting paid $27 an hour.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what they signed up for. They didn't sign up for politics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's none of this is to say that you have to completely change the model too and not incentivize things like new leases, right? You just got to look at what's the mix of incentivization. So, look at the $100, leasing commission versus a renewal commission. The renewal commission, you could make $500 and you're still going to come out ahead. And So then you have a bigger pool that you're splitting across your teams. Incentivize even down to the leasing agent. Based on NOI, have a portion of their annual bonus be tied to NOI for the community. They're as much part of driving resident experience and retention and boosting NOI as anybody. They own the top of the funnel on acquiring new residents and revenue. And then when you look at the benefits and the savings of not having a property turn in your OpEx and things like that, I mean, they contribute to it too. So why not incentivize them for that? And I think that the conventional wisdom has kind of been, well, leasing agents are newer to the space. They're a little bit less sophisticated. They don't understand kind of the full scale property operations. And my challenge to leaders is, okay, teach them. Go through and make sure they understand the big picture. Make sure they understand the operations. Then you have a path to incentivize them on the total performance of the asset. Which will make it more fair and will help you align their incentives to the financial performance of the owners. And frankly, you're building your bench in a much greater way for future talent, future opportunities, future promotions, because you're starting educating your team much earlier than likely your competitors are all in your market. So you're making your team better. And that's going to end up providing a lot of long-term benefits too.
Well, and one of the things that we keep hearing about in this talent conversation is, like if you want to get to hell yes with talent, like align with the interests of and not the like paycheck by paycheck interests of the talent, because that talent's going to turn on you. Like if you're going to compete on a semi-monthly basis, like on the 1st and the 15th, that's how you're competing with talent. That's a very expensive game. It's just like the transactional pieces we talked about with respect to attracting and retaining residents or owners. And so like thinking about, okay, how am I going to track this person for 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years? How is my promise going to shift? And I realize that that's difficult to do if you are in a turn and burn kind of like investment owner, or maybe, but that still has to have a bit of a play to it, because what's funny is that even when you get acquired, they typically try and hire the staff back anyways. So it's like there is something that needs to be considered when you look at the longevity of these careers, because even though our business, like we make it easier for folks on the site, we do reduce a lot of the workload, which makes it easier. And you can argue that it makes it, you don't need as many people, but like the point isn't to remove the people. The point is that people are already burned out. Like it's a crap job. Like, I mean, if you had to look at some of the eviction work that people have to do in a maintenance perspective, like it's an inhumane ask for people in many cases to go in there and see some of the things that they've got to clean up. Yeah. Your job, is your job. The job description includes cleaning up, fixing things, responding to resident requests, being friendly, all those things. It doesn't talk about pest infestation. It doesn't talk about trash that's left everywhere. Like, it doesn't talk about all the gross parts about it. That's part of the job. Yeah. And so like, we need to be able to let people see past the grim parts of that job and the career opportunities before them, so that we can get hell yes people to stay in the business. Otherwise, they're going to go to a private equity based alternative, like an HVAC, like a painting company's been picked up by private equity. Like the amount of money that's chasing this part of the business because of the kind of like natural inefficiencies of delivering field service is absolutely, it's unimaginable. And we can't in this business, if we don't address those, we're not going to have people to work in these facilities anymore. Yeah. And I don't know if it's going to be a slow boil, but ultimately there's going to be a company, or there's going to be a property manager who's getting ripped on in Google because maintenance isn't being fulfilled, or maybe the leasing agent was rude, but it's because they cannot find the people to do the job. And it's like very oriented around the people right now. So like the absence of training programs, the absence of, and this is where like, when we talk about centralization, it's a contentious conversation. But when we talk about centralization, you can centralize the people. You can also centralize the process. Yeah. So Ritz-Carlton is an example, very on site, but you don't step on site until you've gone through like 9 weeks of training, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of approach to standardizing the way that you interact with residents, standardizing the way you interact with guests, it's called an example, is also what's missing in a lot of these cases. And I know that there are some leaders in this space. I've talked to a bunch of them that are competing and winning on different sides of things, but there's 45 million apartments for rent in the US. And we're talking about a small slice of them that are professionally managed. Everything else is like, it's the Wild West.
Yeah.
That brings a bad name to the whole industry.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that challenge is so multi-pronged and so many executives and leaders, and to your point just now, not all executives and leaders, but still, I think the majority of them are looking at the wrong piece of it, and they look at pay. Pay is table stakes now.
Yeah.
I mean, make sure that you are paying more than fairly, and I think to your point, make sure that you're not looking at your competitor down the street and what they are paying maintenance techs. Look at what that maintenance tech could go and make if they went and worked for an HVAC company. So you're paying for the expertise and not the job title. In that should be, again, that's like the baseline. And then beyond that, invest in them as people and know who they are and what their aspirations are and what their motivations are, and manage and lead to those things. And that can be done large and small. I mean, it can be done in career pathing. It can be done in paying for continuing ed or new certifications. It can be done in, knock it if you want to, but it could be done in team building, like pizza parties and things like that. I'm not the hugest advocate for it, but that's part of it, as long as it's only a part of it. And at Progress Residential, I mean, my team were I used to affectionately call them the button pushers and field filler outers of the construction process. We were the admin team. We were the coordination team. And we ended up, and we had a national fully remote team. So, as many as 165 team members in the US as its largest, and 60 in India. And they are a team that are just like what you talked about, but from an administrative standpoint, they are cleaning up the crap administratively on every single one of these projects. And it can be very, folks can be very dismissive of that role. And so some of the things that we ended up doing, me and my leadership team that I oversaw, we traveled a ton and just got in market in the places where these folks lived. And we spent time with them in coffee shops, and we spent most of those conversations talking about them as people and their families more than we were talking about what we were doing work-wise. We also did what I called kind of virtual book clubs for the modern age. And so instead of books, we did TED Talks. And so we did a TED Tuesday and a Wellness Wednesday where we would get folks on and we'd watch a TED Talk and we'd have a conversation about that. And it almost was never like, how do I make you more productive? It was, what motivates you as a person? What do you, there was a great one by Ethan Hawke, just kind of about his perspective on the evolution of the movie industry and kind of what drove him emotionally to art. We did a lot of like mental health strategies and things like that because it's just such a, it's such a difficult position to be in, and anything that we could do to help them not just feel more like a team, but let them know that we cared about them as people and not just producers. I think that it was incumbent on us as leaders to do that. And
what you just described though is an interesting approach, right? Instead of an offer and accept kind of like relationship, it's like it's like a learn and respond relationship. What I mean by that for everyone is that like an offer accept, I tell you what I'm going to offer you, and you can choose to accept it or not. And in a learn and respond relationship, I'm seeking to understand what are your goals, your motivations, what do you want to achieve in your life? And then I respond to that with what I can offer.
Yeah.
Right. And so that is a different lens and it might actually make a lot of these site staff uncomfortable because they'd have to express things they probably haven't thought about before, especially, given kind of the average age, et cetera. But, it might land on a better alignment with the work environment and just kind of being transparent about the deal. Because like maybe the deal is this is a 2-year career and then you go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And guess what? That happens in every industry, right? If you go to investment banking, you murder yourself for 2 years as an analyst and then you're out. So, I mean, it happens on every single accounting. You article for 30 months and then you're out. Lawyers, you article for, you intern article for like a certain amount of time and then you're moving on. And that's how it works in these higher end fields. And it's okay. Like they have models that are built that when you're articling or interning or an analyst, you follow a system and then it's up or out. There is no, it's okay. And maybe the industry needs that permission to say, this is a 2-year career.
Yeah.
And if you acknowledge the truth that it's a 2-year career, then you build systems and structures to enable success within 24 months.
Yeah.
But if you fool yourself and think that it's a 10-year career, but you treat it like it's a 9-month career, then you're wasting everyone's time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's that level of transparency and again, kind of career pathing is something that is missing in our industry, or very nascent at some companies in our industry. Mm-hmm. But we talk so much about resident retention in this space, and that's a huge kind of buzzword at every conference that I've been to this year.
Yeah, and but I feel like you said, I feel it's buzzy.
Yeah,
it's like a little less conversation, a little more action. It seems like.
But I would also kind of say, well, let's focus on employee retention too, and I think that those two numbers are likely more correlated than people know.
Mm-hmm.
And so shifting from, and I love the way that you framed it, the offer and accept to the learn and respond, shifting from the offer and accept model to a learn and respond model with that team at Progress Residential. When I came in, that team had a 22% annual turnover rate. So mm-hmm. we were replacing a little bit more than 1 out of every 5 team members that we had every single year. We drove that down to less than 8% in 12 months. And then you look at it from kind of an executive level, then the productivity gains that we were starting to make because we didn't have this drain of institutional knowledge or skill that we had to retrain constantly. Mm-hmm. It was pretty incredible what we were able to achieve as we did that. And it was just by taking a different approach in how we invested in our people. And to your point, we weren't talking about it. We were doing it. We were flying all over the country. We were setting up, we're setting up calls twice a month and doing other things, a little fun kind of team building calls. We did a lot of trivia afternoons and things like that.
I got a buddy, one of our customers. He tells a story. He runs a call center. So prior to COVID, out of Cleveland. If I got it wrong, he'll forgive me. But he says, he used to run the call center. This is prior to COVID. They were all in Cleveland, and now they're all over across 48 states. But he tells a story that he knows exactly how many dilly bars fit in the back seat of a Honda CRV. He knows how many corn cobs you can buy and put it in the back of the CRV. He knows how much you can buy, and just around the kind of stuff he would do to keep the team, spirits up there, right? Get people talking about something other than work. And that is lost a little bit in a remote context, but that doesn't apply to the on-site career experience. Like it's like there's something that could be captured is not being captured, and something that and that missed opportunity to create careers in order to solve the P&L problem. Like again, I'm very practical about where money should be spent and the urgency around outcomes. But you can't just ignore the truth around the people that need to do the work. Like there isn't a CEO in any third party or any ownership group or any REIT that's going to say our people are priority number 2. There just isn't one. They don't exist because they know, right? Now, whether that cascades down or not, that's contentious. But like there is at the leadership level, the people that get paid the most, the hippos in the room, they know that it's about people. And along the way, it gets diluted or it gets conflated or it gets confused. And something seems to fall apart when it comes down to execution.
Yeah.
And that's a part that like what I'm trying to dig into and get curious, get your point is like play devil's advocate for a second and play along with me because we're live and you don't have a choice. Is that what if we don't solve the problem? Like I'm really kind of getting obsessed with this alternate view. If we don't solve talent, what's the worst that could happen?
That's a great question. And I think that we have like a movie trailer version of that right now with the talent crisis on the maintenance side of this business. And I've spent the summer having a lot of conversations about new opportunities, but I also search through job boards for leading companies in the industry every single week. And I will tell you, to get to director of operations or VP of operations roles or RVP roles in some of these companies that I'm looking at and applying to, for every one of those executive level roles, there are 50 maintenance technician and maintenance supervisor roles at every single property that they have, that they are actively recruiting for. And, so look at that as your canary in the coal mine. If you are struggling right now, and as an individual apartment community or a small portfolio of SFR homes that you're managing, if you are finding that you are unable to internalize those work orders, and I think across every single company, internalizing the work orders is going to give you the best ROI generally. If you have a well-trained workforce. Yep. Then if you're internalizing those work orders 35% of the time instead of 75% of the time, and you look at how much that is costing you in resident experience, in resident retention, and certainly in ROI and NOI of that asset, and you think you have a problem now, then don't look at the pay scale again as table stakes for your team members. Don't look at how you're training them and offering new certifications and helping them build new skills. And don't look at helping them understand that you care about them as a person and want to develop them as a person, and not like how you squeeze that 8th work order out of them in a given day. And and you'll see the problem that we already have grow exponentially. And then that's where, to your point, kind of the shift in PE firms buying up service companies and paint companies and all that stuff. What's going to end up happening is that not just all those dollars that you're not spending on staff right now, but far more are going to end up going to those PE-backed service companies, because
there's an outcome that's inevitable, right? Because I mean, and for clarity, right? When a PE buys you, the clock starts ticking, right? They have a 5-year, call it 5X. One can be higher, lower, one can be higher, lower, but somewhere looks like that. They're not buying a company for dividend returns and 15% return on their money on a year-over-year basis. They're buying that company because they want to see it grow and they want to amplify the results and take a market, right? They want to repeat, rinse. They want to do that over and over again. And so going to a P&E firm is going to attract higher pay, but the challenge is going to be that you take these inefficient businesses and we're going to put some gas on them. And so that's going to create a lot of a lot of at-bats.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that from a people perspective, it may appear to be on a paycheck, on a wage basis, more attractive, but it's going to be infinitely more chaotic. But that's not something that we choose to compete against, right? We're choosing to compete on, it's like we compete on price.
Yeah.
And when you compete on price in a talent conversation, you inevitably pay for what you get. And so you can choose to compete on 50 cents more or a dollar more, but that's really just you're just throwing dollars out the window. You're not 100%. Really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so I find it interesting that if everybody, it is everyone will nod heads. This is the part that's trying to figure it out. It's maybe somewhere in a dark room at 2 a.m, people will acknowledge the fact that maybe they just don't care, or maybe they can't care, or maybe it's out of their hands, but something needs to become transparent around the relationship. If you are a strategic member of the outcome, or you're a cog in the machine. Now, what's most interesting about it is that when, and this might be the scariest thing people talk about, is that when you are a cog in the machine, those jobs tend to organize. And that would be really dangerous for this business.
Yeah.
Is if all of a sudden we had an organized, and I don't know if people are even talking about it, but that's typically what happens. Is you get an organized labor movement for people who are treated like cogs in the wheel, so they collectively have a role in the conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm not towards that movement, but if you go back in history and realize that if you treat people like that, they will organize, you will have a union, and now all bets are off on how you run your business.
Yeah.
Because we deal with unions all the time. We've got some of our customers are union, some of our customers are association, and it's a pretty good relationship most cases. Sometimes it's not at all. And those are usually aren't our customers, but when it is a good relationship, it works. But like that is the worst case scenario. Is it an organized union or a collective agreement for these people that work in these industries? And it's pretty easy to pick them off, like how it would happen. Like it's not that if you stand back and look at the tea leaves and look at what happened in other industries, airline, automotive, mechanical, manufacturing, acting, serving, like look at LA, blackjack dealers are unionized, right?
Yeah.
Like Las Vegas, sorry. But like it is something that is so easy for someone to go and work at. And so if we don't fix this problem, the worst possible scenario that I could imagine is a collective agreement amongst those that are working at the site level.
Yeah.
And imagine that problem then.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about that, if you kind of take that scenario and you keep playing it out, is that, for lack of paying your people fairly and then investing in their continued development in some way, shape, or form. And we're talking right now kind of mostly through the lens of maintenance, right? So also at the end of the day, the repairs have to be made. Like we are landlords that have to offer a fit and habitable residence. Yeah, we have a legal obligation to do this, and so the repairs have to be made. They can either be made by somebody that is on your team and invested in your company's success or not. And if you look at kind of the long game that you just said, you're going to end up paying those dollars as an owner, no matter what. Whether it's right now for a vendor because you don't have the staff to do it internally, in the future it's for an inflated wage for a union because some of that money goes to excess overhead for the administration of the union and things like that. It's things that absolutely do not benefit either the workers or your residents or your own income statement. And so again, it's kind of the strategic leaders of the industry absolutely need to take a step back sometimes and look at I'm looking for a new role right now, so I'm not in the thick of it. I have the benefit of being able to take a step back because I'm not personally invested in any one company's success or one property success or one team success. So I get it. I fully identify with folks that would really like to look more strategically at what they're doing, but have an owner that's like, hey, I've got a debt maturity in 12 months and we are not on track to hitting that. And is full. And I have been the regional manager and the VP that has faced that on multiple properties at one time. I get being in the weeds and having that asset manager breathing down your neck for what their strategic goals are, and you having to sacrifice your own strategic goals to meet theirs. And it's a really, really hard problem or hard position, I'll say, to be in. But to your point earlier, if you don't take that pause and look at how you need to set things up strategically and make sure that you're investing in your people and monetarily and programmatically, and giving them a tech stack that helps them be more effective at what they do and frees them up to not only perform the work that's more of a value add for your residents and for your ownership group, but generally the work that they like doing better. And which increases their satisfaction and will increase your employee retention too. If you don't take the time to invest in that now, you're not going to have it later on, and things are only going to get worse, and you're gonna keep just kind of fighting fire after fire after fire. And and if there is one thing that property management professionals know, it is grabbing a bucket and a helmet and going and trying to put out the next figurative fire. It's such an interesting position that we're in the industry right now.
And I think that, we take a look at where we were 4 years ago and where we are today. It's been such a dramatic change with respect to the scarcity of talent, the availability of residents and owners, right? You start seeing a consolidation to third-party fee management and big money getting into the ownership side of things. And there is a lot of call it balance sheet side disruption that's happening, right? And not everyone always pays attention to the balance sheet in an operations context, certainly not in a talent context. But at the end of the day, that's this business. It's an asset business. It's a balance sheet business. And so we have to pay attention to who owns that balance sheet, who's funding it, what are their expectations, what are they looking for, how are they leveraging up these assets, how are they going in the market, both from, like you mentioned, the three-legged stool of the resident has a voice, the owner has a voice. I mean, it's a four-legged stool, really: resident, owner, manager, and then talent. And I just, I guess I'd be curious to have a forum where all four have a voice and share what they're seeking to achieve. Because that's like the hell yes that everyone's seeking to find. And you hear success stories of people that of brands that have gone out there and that have built a brand around, solving it differently. We've had a number of them on the show. And it's been an interesting conversation to hear the different approaches on how to solve these problems around those four stakeholders that, for the first time in a long time, all have an equal voice.
Yeah.
Maybe, and depending on the region, maybe more power towards one versus the other.
Yeah.
If you're in Austin right now, rents are off 8%. You can't fill a job. They are hurting on two sides of that two legs in that stool, not to mention they've got another 30,000 units coming on 2025. So it's like that market is calamity right now, and people are they're persisting and driving through the smoke. But it's still you can't ignore the reality of what's happening. And so there's adjustments to be made.
Yeah. And it's, you mentioned the four legs of that stool, and when you're working to get to hell yes, you have to understand the unique perspective of each one of those legs. And if you're in sales and selling into the space and selling into a, call it an institutional client, and or even a mid-market firm of certain size, you'll find your entry point, and you'll find kind of this is the first person that I have gotten to buy into what my product or my service is. But from there, especially in this environment, you've got to work up and down that ladder and reach everybody that's got a stake in this, and understand their pain points, and and be able to sell to that person and that person's pain point, and not be like, well, hey, yeah, your regional VP told me that I should talk to you and show you this. It's, I talked to them about how this solves their problem, but tell me about what problems you have, and we'll see if it's the right solution for you. It's a completely different conversation than I think it used to be. You mentioned it 4 years ago as we were kind of going through COVID. Back then, it used to be really, I won't say really easy. It used to be easier to sell into a company because they were just much more willing to try out something new as we were in this rapidly evolving cycle coming, through and coming out of COVID. Now, the all the stakeholders are being a little bit more discerning, and then you end up finding that each stakeholder owns a little bit less of the problem. And that ends up meaning that, that your approach has got to be much more holistic and much more thorough, and will take sometimes multiples more contacts and time to be able to get to hell yes. And that's not on you as a sales rep or an account executive. It's not on your company as a product or service. It's just the environment that we have to operate in, and you gotta have a little bit, I think, deeper knowledge about the industry and understand operators' perspective and owners' perspectives and executives' perspectives and the maintenance team's perspective, and again, each one of the store and the residents' perspective and what their experience is going to be, and how each one of those puzzle pieces fits together, and to form the full picture. And if you can do that, then I think you're gonna find that companies are going to be more receptive. You're going to end up seeing you're going to win more pilots, and then hopefully win more business as you move on.
That's a good segue to the kind of second last question is always around one piece of advice. So you look back at your beginning of your career, maybe a younger Brandon, or maybe someone who's just, joining a company that you're joining, or however you want to frame it. But what's one piece of advice you'd offer to folks that are, meeting you the first time and they're seeking to find, a hell yes outcome?
Yeah. I mean, I think understanding that this will always be a people business, and taking that to heart, and hopefully taking it if I'm offering advice to younger professionals in the industry far earlier than I made that realization and accepting it in my own career. But we provide homes for people. We provide homes for millions and tens of millions of people in the U.S. And we do that largely through people as well, and through teams that are serving those. And so, there is no hack for the multifamily industry, the SFR industry. There's no hack for student housing to where you can effectively provide a great home for someone with just a few mouse clicks. There are going to be people involved at every step of the process, not least of which your customers are people, and your internal customers are people. And so understanding that and investing in them, and being open and willing to understand their needs is, I think, critical. And again, I mean, it took me the first 15 years of my career. I took the people part. I took advantage of the people part, and was trying to build a better mousetrap in everywhere that I was going. And that was my primary motivation, and kind of trying to be the smartest person in the room, and not the best, and not the most effective person in the room, or the best leader, or the best listener. And the last call it 5-6 years of my career, I've really tried to invest way more in people, and understanding how to make them successful, and realizing that I'm only going to reach as far as I can because I'm standing on the shoulders of a team that helps me get there. And so I think that's the biggest piece of advice. Learn that early, and you will flourish way sooner, and soar way higher than you ever will otherwise.
Well, I share the same learnings, So, I think that to play it back in this business, we provide a human outcome, right? To humans, like a truly a humanity oriented outcome to human beings. And we deliver that through a combination, or maybe a multiplication of assets times people, times humans.
Yeah.
Right. If there wasn't the humans, then the assets become less valuable. Within the assets, the humans are doing work that doesn't need to be done. Yeah. So it's this union of humans and assets that provide the outcome to other humans.
And I would even add technology into that mix as well. I mean, assets and technology and humans. But I think the realization that has to happen is that's not a zero-sum game. You're not pushing one down to increase the other, or to moderately increase the third. I mean, it's not that. All three of those things can feed on one another and make one another better.
Yeah.
And so it's figuring out how to do that and how to increase the asset value by using the right technology that is going to make your people better, and realizing that that you do it through that, and again, it's not zero sum.
And I think that for, of course, I'm on the technology side of things, always a technology component. But the metaphor we use all the time is you wouldn't hire a whole team of people and give them all screwdrivers and leave all the power drills on the shelf, right?
No.
Like that would seem ridiculous at this point in time.
Yeah.
But that is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We are talking about, like, what would that be? Like maybe 20 turns a minute versus, 400 turns a minute. Like it's just a catalyst for getting the same job done.
Yeah, exactly.
Do a little differently. Well, thanks so much, Brandon. It was wonderful having you on today.
Yeah, this was fun.
Who else should we talk to? I forgot this yesterday.
So have you ever had Adrian Della on your show?
You know what?
I know you know Adrian, but have you ever?
You know what? I'm going to bring him on, and Adrian is a very close friend of mine, and I'm going to bring him on. I was thinking about that the other day because he was talking about his business on one of his snippets, and I think that people would love to hear his business because what he's doing is, he's being very smart about it, and it's worth sharing, and it's his mission is aligned with a commercial outcome, which is a beautiful spot to be in, right? I'm going to ping Adrian. He's a beauty.
Yeah, you should have him on. I mean, we just spent most of the hour talking about the talent problem that we have in our industry and how to solve it. I mean, I don't know anybody better to speak to that. And in all the episodes I had seen, I was like, I don't think that I've seen Adrian and Guillermo chat.
Well, I'm in Atlanta in the Georgia NRHC event, and Adrian and I are going to spend a day together. So we talked about doing a podcast. So I think we'll do that. We'll do a podcast. Do it. All right, we'll get him. Well, I think we already got it. The police haven't announced it yet. We're doing it. We just don't know we're doing it yet. That's a great one. Thanks, Brandon. All right. Well, thanks for everyone listening today. Appreciate your time. If you're listening on LinkedIn later on, add some comments, tag us. We'll automatically get a tag in there. We can jump on if you have any questions or comments. If you're listening on the podcast on Apple or Spotify, obviously like, subscribe, download, follow. That makes it so much easier for everybody to find us. And then thirdly, what was the third one here? This is always brought to you by RCX. We're at remote maintenance for property management, help you know before you go, save trips, speed things up, use less, be more effective with your people, less burnout, and make it a whole lot easier for everybody if you know what you're getting into. Had a conversation the other day where someone was telling me in field service that 9 out of 10 times they do not know what they're getting into whenever they go to service order. And I'm like, yeah, I know. There's a way to solve that. So
you're like leak in kitchen, and then they get on site and they're like, actually, no, the problem is in the bathroom.
Yeah. Or it's like completely, Anyways, thanks everyone for listening today. Appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. And I really do. I think it's a lasting point for everybody. It is a people business, provide human outcomes through humans. And we've got to think about that beyond the paycheck, paycheck to paycheck, beyond the payroll cycle. Because the problem is going to be something, it's just in our all best interest. Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Brandon. All right.
Awesome.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening. Brandon, hang tight. We'll close it out and have a good day, everybody. There you go, sir.